And last year it was the Mike Evans show, but Chris Godwin kind of falls by the wayside in this whole equation. Chris Godwin's been a fairly solid high floor slot receiver for most of his career. The recent reports and now, with I'm drawing a blank on the OC last year, Dave Canales, who's now with the Carolina Panthers. He's gone. They are now planning to use Chris Godwin more in the slot where he belongs. And ever since that report, which was probably a week ago, we're seeing his ADP kind of correct itself. It's up 11.8 spots. He was being drafted as 79.7 player off the board. He is now going 67.9. What is the temperature for Deshaun Watson for Chris Godwin?
Yeah, Chris Godwin had 1,000 yards last year. It was not his best, but to Anthony's point, right, he was playing in a role where it wasn't really suiting him, right? I mean, he's not an outside receiver. This is a guy who is a good route runner and has always succeeded in the slot. I mean, he had 295 snaps in the slot, and he had 588 out wide in 2023. I think it was Hoff that said that he had, I want to say like 74 or 75% in seasons prior to that. And this was a significant drop off. I think he was in 30 or 40 percentile, or 30 or 40% of his snaps were in the slot, which is a huge drop off. And he still had 1,000 yards. He's had 1,000 yards in 4 of the last 5 seasons, and he's had 119 targets in 4 of the last five seasons, a minimum of 119. So this is a guy who he gets open. He they're outside of Mike Evans. Yes, I mean they drafted McMillan. I like him as a prospect. Trey Palmer's a guy. But, like, there's not a big – I mean, Cade Otton, I like Cade Otton, but he's not a target hog. He's not an elite separator at the tight end position. He's not going to be calling for the ball like that. The biggest competition for the number 2 spot in receptions is Rachaad White probably on this team. Outside of that, it's really Mike Evans. So I like Chris Godwin at his price. Guys that are going around him in terms of FFPC, you have guys like Christian Kirk, T. Higgins. I probably prefer those guys over Godwin. Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin is very much similar to Chris Godwin, right? Doesn't get into the end zone, always 1,000-yard receiver, catches a decent amount of passes. The difference is Terry McLaurin has had bad quarterback play around him. He's going to get a better quality targets, right? So you'd think that should improve. Chris Godwin's had decent quarterback play. He had Brady, then he had Baker Mayfield, he had Winston before that. So I'm probably drafting most guys. The one guy close to him, Keenan Allen, I'd probably go with Chris Godwin over Keenan Allen. But other than that, I'd probably rather Calvin Ridley, even who's going slightly behind Chris Godwin in terms of FFPC ADP right now.
Yeah, when we look at Chris Godwin last year, he actually had a better season than he did his final year with Brady in terms of efficiency. That 2022, 9.8 yards per reception, back up to 12.3, his most since 2020. If we look and go back to 2019, Chris Godwin from 2019 to 2022 has never finished worse than the wide receiver 15 in fantasy points per game. And 2 of those seasons, he was the wide receiver 2 in fantasy points per game and the wide receiver 7 in that category. Also, since 2019, that was 5 seasons. So 4 of those seasons, he played at least 14 games. And all 4 of those seasons, he's gone over 1,000 yards. In the 2020 where he played in 12, he had 840 and was on pace to get over 1,000 yards. So we know what we're going to get out of Chris Godwin in terms of the high floor. But if we look at some of his other finishes, like if this offense starts to click and they're playing Godwin where he should be out of the slot, then there's no reason why to think that he can't. At worst, he returns value at his current price. Yeah. But in a perfect world, I'm not saying he's not going to be a wide receiver 1, but like, can he finish as a top 30, maybe even a top 24 receiver? I don't think it's crazy, but again, it's also up to how does this offense play? How does Baker Mayfield play without Dave Canales?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much what he is at this point, though. He's going to be a guy that probably finishes in the top 24. You know what you're getting with Chris Godwin. It depends on your draft build, right? We talked about it with like Amari Cooper, right? Like it depends where you are in your draft. I'm not going into drafts excited to draft Chris Godwin, but depends on how my team is, right? If I have a lot of upside guys and I need someone who's a little bit more stable, Chris Godwin's going to be able to provide week-to-week stability for you.
And I hate to be that guy. Godwin's 28 years old, entering his age 28 season. Mike Evans is going to be 31 very soon. I think it's September. I get he was fantastic last year, and he's been absolutely money. But is this the year where maybe he gets caught up by injury? Maybe age catches up to him. So there's some other factors that we need to think about here. Like Evans, let's say what it will, like as great as he was last year, he was very, very big play. He was number one amongst wide receivers and deep targets. Is that going to be sustained? He had 13 total touchdowns. Is that going to be sustained? I know he hit that number in 3 out of the past 4 seasons, but again, different OC. What the hell version of Baker Mayfield are we going to get? So I don't know. I feel like when we're looking like last year, like Evans, his ADP, if you drafted Mike Evans last year, he was very, very cheap. And he was a league winner. There's a lot more risk involved drafting Mike Evans as a 23rd player off the board right now.
Yeah.
Where Godwin, if you want a piece of this offense, Godwin's a nice safety net.
Yep. Yeah. Like I said, week to week stability. You're definitely going to get with Godwin. Yeah, there is that risk. Evans falls back to the Amari Coopers and the James Conner. People don't want to draft him because of the age, and they're worried that they're going to draft him and he's going to fall off, right? And he continues every year to just prove people wrong, right? So. We never know with Evans. Could this be the year? I don't know, but we'll see. Aaron came